Guys, it's me, Dr. Cribs, and I'm here with Piper again, and I'm going to start reading a new, different kind of read aloud. I'm going to start my first chapter book, read aloud with you guys, so I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing at once. I'm going to break it up into a few different videos, and if it's a little tricky to hear me, even though it's really sunny out, it's actually raining right now. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about why read alouds are important and why listening to chapter book read alouds are also pretty awesome. If you happen to see the message to the parents, and you're not a parent, so you probably didn't watch it, you might have heard, though, that I actually read to my daughter until she was 16 years old. And my daughter is a junior at UGA, and she's a really awesome student, really super smart. So reading aloud is something that helps you your whole life. I'm going to be reading aloud one of my favorite books. It is called The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. It's by Kate DiCamillo, and she's written a whole lot of books, but they're all kind of different. One of maybe her more famous books is Because of Winn-Dixie. She also wrote my very favorite book of all time, which is The Tale of Despereaux. But I really like her stories because there's a lot of little threads and connections running through them, and this one is no different. So what I'm about to do is going to try to change my seating. I'm going to try to lay down so that I can also have Piper in the video, and I'll start reading, but know that I'm going to stop before the whole book is over, or even a whole lot of it, and I'll add a little bit each time. Okay, we're going to try this way instead. And for your information, this book is, the Lexile level is 700 on it. And here's the first. It has a lot of prints in it. You'll find out who Edward Tulane is in just a minute. Well, come on, you gotta stay. You're part of the deal. The heart breaks and breaks and lives by breaking. It is necessary to go through dark and deeper dark and not to turn. And that is from The Testing Tree by Stanley Kunitz. The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, Chapter 1. And here is a print of a little girl holding a pocket watch. Once, in a house on Egypt Street, there lived a rabbit who was made almost entirely of china. He had china arms and china legs, china paws and a china head, a china torso and a china nose. His arms and legs were jointed and joined by wire so that his china elbows and china knees could be bent, giving him much freedom of movement. His ears were made of real rabbit fur, and beneath the fur there were strong, bendable wires which allowed the ears to be arranged into poses that reflected the rabbit's mood, jaunty, tired, full of ennui. His tail, too, was made of real rabbit fur and was fluffy and soft and well-shaped. The rabbit's name was Edward Tulane, and he was tall. He measured almost 3 feet from the tip of his ears to the tip of his feet. His eyes were painted a penetrating and intelligent blue. So is Edward Tulane a real rabbit? And the answer would be, no, he's not. He's a toy, but he's a really big toy. He's almost 3 feet tall, and that's probably as tall as some of you guys. So that's pretty big. In all, Edward Tulane felt himself to be an exceptional specimen. Only his whiskers gave him pause. They were long and elegant, as they should be, but they were of uncertain origin. Edward felt quite strongly that they were not the whiskers of a rabbit. Whom the whiskers had belonged to initially, what unsavory animal, was a question that Edward could not bear to consider for too long, and so he did not. He preferred, as a rule, not to think unpleasant thoughts. Edward's mistress was a 10-year-old, dark-haired girl named Abilene Tulane, who thought almost as highly of Edward as Edward thought of himself. Each morning, after she dressed herself for school, Abilene dressed Edward. The china rabbit was in possession of an extraordinary wardrobe composed of handmade silk suits, custom shoes fastened from the finest leather and designed specifically for his rabbit feet, and a wide array of hats equipped with holes so that they could easily fit over Edward's large and expressive ears. Each pair of well-cut pants had a small pocket for Edward's gold pocket watch. Aveline wound this watch for him each morning, so that watch that we saw at the beginning actually belonged to the toy rabbit. "Now, Edward," she said to him after she was done winding the watch, "when the big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 3, I will come home to you." She placed Edward on a chair in the dining room and positioned the chair so that Edward was looking out the window and could see the path that led up to the Tulane front door. Aveline balanced the watch on his left leg. She kissed the tips of his ears, and then she left, and Edward spent the day staring out at Egypt Street, listening to the tick of his watch and waiting. So where do you guys think she probably went? I'd say school. Of all the seasons of the year, the rabbit most preferred winter, for the sun set early then, and the dining room windows became dark, and Edward could see his own reflection in the glass. And what a reflection it was! What an elegant feature he cut! Edward never ceased to be amazed at his own fineness. So wait a minute, I want to stop for a minute here and make sure you understand that Edward is not a real rabbit. He is a toy, and the author keeps talking about him like he's alive, and that he likes himself a whole lot and is thinking all the time while he's sitting there in that chair. So that's kind of interesting. In the evening, Edward sat at the dining room table with the other members of the Tulane family, Aveline, her mother and father, and Aveline's grandmother, who was called Pellegrina. True, Edward's ears barely cleared the tabletop, and true also, he spent the duration of the meal staring straight ahead at nothing but the bright and blinding white of the tablecloth. But he was there, a rabbit at the table. Aveline's parents found it charming that Aveline considered Edward real, and that she sometimes requested that a phrase or story be repeated because Edward had not heard it. "Papa," Aveline would say, "I'm afraid that Edward didn't catch that last bit." Aveline's father would then turn in the direction of Edward's ears and speak slowly, repeating what he had just said for the benefit of the china rabbit. Edward pretended, out of courtesy to Aveline, to listen, but in truth he was not very interested in what people had to say, and also he did not care for Aveline's parents and their condescending manner toward him. All adults, in fact, condescended to him. Only Aveline's grandmother spoke to him as Aveline did, as one equal to another. Pellegrina was very old. She had a large, sharp nose and bright black eyes that shone like dark stars. It was Pellegrina who was responsible for Edward's existence. It was she who had commissioned his making, she who had ordered his silk suits and his pocket watch, his jaunty hats and his bendable ears, his fine leather shoes and his jointed arms and legs, all from a master craftsman in her native France. It was Pellegrina who had given him as a gift to Aveline on her 7th birthday, and it was Pellegrina who came each night to tuck Aveline into her bed and Edward into his. "Will you tell us a story, Pellegrina?" Aveline asked her grandmother each night. "Not tonight, lady," said Pellegrina. "When?" asked Aveline. "What night?" "Soon," said Pellegrina. "Soon there will be a story." And then she turned off the light, and Edward and Aveline lay in the dark of the bedroom. "I love you, Edward," Aveline said each night after Pellegrina had left. She said those words, and then she waited, almost as if she expected Edward to say something in return. Edward said nothing. He said nothing because, of course, he could not speak. He lay in a small bed next to Aveline's large one. He stared up at the ceiling and listened to the sound of her breath entering and leaving her body, knowing that soon she would be asleep. Because Edward's eyes were painted on and he could not close them, he was always awake. Sometimes, if Aveline put him into his bed on his side instead of on his back, he could see through the cracks in the curtains and out into the dark night. On clear nights the stars shone, and their pinprick light comforted Edward in a way that he could not quite understand. Often he stared at the stars all night until the dark finally gave way to dawn. And that's the end of chapter 1, so I'm going to stop. The one point that I do want to make is that I hope you heard me make mistakes, because I think that's really important that you understand that even somebody as old as I am, who's been reading as long as I am, does make mistakes when they read, especially when they read out loud. So that is a normal thing. I think sometimes we think you should be perfect every time you read aloud. And I know I used to get really nervous about it when I was a kid. So see you next time for chapter 2.